The seventh lecture on this unit on ancient Rome is going to delve into the rise and spread of Christianity through the Roman Empire, and then we'll shift gears and talk about how Rome begins to decline and fall in the second, third, and fourth centuries AD. So we're not going to delve too in-depthly in Christianity, particularly the teachings of Jesus. It's a Catholic school that we're teaching at, so we're hopefully you're taking a lot of that stuff from theology and working it in here. But again, we're talking about the historical Jesus. Jesus is a Jewish teacher out of Nazareth, begins to grow in prominence. One of several wandering preachers and messianic figures from this time period in that part of the Roman Empire. And his ideas that kind of differ from others is that you can have a personal relationship with God, the importance of love for others, and he's going to establish an eternal kingdom after death if you believe in him and God. Now, this message is going to resonate pretty powerfully with members of society. We talked about Buddhism and how Buddhism very much its message is tailored towards certain people, particularly in its rise in India, and then begins to become popular as it spreads on the Silk Roads, both westward and eastward. And this message that Jesus has is very resonant with poor and women in society. Particularly the downtrodden, and very much the message of Christianity is that you can have a pretty darn hard life. You can be shoveling poop for your entire life. You can have this ailment, this disfigurement, these hardships laid upon you. And yet, if you are a good person, you believe in God, you believe in Jesus' message, you then can have an eternal resting place with in heaven with puppy dogs and ice cream and roller coasters for all of eternity. And so that's going to have an appeal to where you can almost see that you will get more into this when we dive deeper into more of the theological message in the Middle Ages that becomes much more of what Christianity grows into. But you're preparing your present life for your future eternal life in the kingdom of heaven if you're a good enough person. And so that very much has an appealing nature to people who are having it rough and tough. Hey, just be a good person and you can kind of have your reward waiting for you. Now, again, we should understand that Jesus is just one person. Jesus is only able to meet and have his message personally delivered to so many people, particularly in the ancient world. So when he dies, and again, you can, depending on your religion, figure out what happens after he's crucified by the Romans. It's going to be his apostles that go and spread his message. It's the apostles that proselytize and apostatize throughout the Roman Empire, and they're going and they move his ideas. Peter and Paul are the two big apostles that are doing that, but it's the apostles who takes Jesus's message and takes these ideas of a Jewish teacher and then package it and phrase it to become a new religion. And again, they're kind of doing this. And you've got to be able to understand the game of telephone that's going on when Jesus is speaking and giving his ideas. Then that's being passed down to what the apostles are interpreting that to mean, and then going and giving their ideas and having that then be repeated and then written down. And some of those gospels that are in the Bible aren't written until 60, 70 years after Jesus has died, and Christianity is slowly starting to kind of come together before it's actually put pen to pavement or pen to parchment there. With those apostles, Peter and Paul are the two big ones. Paul's going to make a very important decision in early Christianity and decrees that the religion should welcome all converts, not just Jews. So you don't have to be a regular Roman citizen worshiping the Roman gods, like what Jesus is saying, then convert to Judaism and go through all the different steps and rites and rituals in order to become a part of the Jewish church. And then from there, move on and then convert to Christianity. You don't have to go through that intermediate step. You can just move right from there, and that makes it a much more welcoming, opening society. There's important things that we want to keep a little bit PG to your thing that also don't need to happen because of that, and that's going to make it a more appealing to more people. So that's why Paul kind of did that. And then again, what allows this message to spread is the Roman world itself, the roads, the infrastructure of the Roman Empire allow for messages, if you get enough people behind it, to go and move quickly and efficiently. Most of the New Testament are letters written from the apostles to early church. Corinthians is the the apostles were answering the early Christian community in Corinth questions that they're going and responding and then writing in there. Okay, and the epistles are also those ideas, and that wouldn't exist without the infrastructure of the Roman world. So that helps part as well. And then the other thing is the common language of the eastern half of the empire in Greek. The Bible is written in Greek. The apostles, they are speaking in Greek because that's a lingua franca. That's a language that most people can understand, or at least a marketplace version of it, to be able to go spread that message. And you don't have to worry about Aramaic or Hebrew or any of these other things. And it's that Greek language, which is again, the inheritance of Alexander the Great in the Hellenistic world he leaves behind, allows for these messages and ideas to kind of coalesce, filter, and then move quickly through the eastern half of the empire and then westward after that. So this is the kind of the area, Judea. This is a province of the Roman Empire. You've got Nazareth here, up kind of in the mountains, and from Nazareth, Jesus is then able to go and spread his message and work his way down to Jerusalem, which is right over here. Uh, these are early Christian iconographies of Christ, and this begins to spread. This is a mosaic that's in Britain with just a couple centuries after Christ's death, and so we see the quickness and spread of the message of Jesus very much building on his ideas and what's it about and its appealing nature to the poor, downtrodden, and looked over in society. The apostles, Peter and Paul, are a big deal. Paul, again, is the one that says we should welcome all converts, and that becomes a thing. Again, we're skipping over a lot of stuff. We're trying to move fast because of, again, nature of a Catholic school we're teaching it. But early Christians are going to be persecuted for their beliefs. They're going to be sacrificed in arenas for the crowd's enjoyment. Again, very much we've talked about this in homework assignments and other things. The idea that the Roman government and the Roman religion, even after, particularly after the switch to over the empire form of government, are wrapped up and are thought of as one as the same. So if you are participating in the Roman government, you are also participating in the Roman religion, in that there's elected positions into the Roman quote unquote church. There's positions of the state, and the worship of the Roman gods is kind of worshiping Rome, capital R, itself. So the Romans' point of view is that by refusing to worship the Roman gods, the Christians are committing treason against the state of Rome. Therefore, they are criminals. Therefore, they deserve to die. And that's the line of logic the Romans are using to persecute the Christians, particularly when there's other religions that are also accepted in there, but those people are letting say, okay, yes, I also worship the kind of the God of Caesar, the God of Augustus. The Christians are saying, no, we don't like that. And again, Christianity and Judaism have a fundamental idea, that is the idea of monotheism. They're not going to worship all these different gods. That is seen as treason in the eyes of others. So for a couple centuries, it very much, and this is an important part of the early Christian church's identity, is this persecution, the martyrdoms of these saints and apostles and other early Christians. And it's not going to be till the Emperor Constantine comes along that Christianity is going to be able to be more accepted. And Constantine's going to have a huge influence on Christianity's ability to survive as well as grow and then become accepted in the Roman Empire. 312 AD, Constantine is a Roman general fighting against another Roman general to be able to decide who's going to become the next emperor of Rome. The night before the battle, which would be called the Battle of the Malvern Bridge, Constantine, like any good athlete, any good leader, anybody who's got a big thing the next day, goes to bed early. And in his sleep that night, he receives a vision of victory on the field of battle tomorrow with a giant Christian cross flaming in the sky. So he wakes up, takes this as a sign from the Christian God, orders his soldiers to paint the sign of the cross on their shields. They then fight to victory, and Constantine says, the Christian God is on my side. He has blessed me. This is something I should do more research on. As emperor the next year, in 313 AD, he issues the Edict of Milan. And the Edict of Milan is official approval of Christianity within the Roman Empire. We want to stress that this is not the official religion of the Roman Empire just yet, But this is the edict that allows for Christians to not be discriminated against, persecuted against, prosecuted against just because they're Christian. So this is an important step in the approval process of Christianity, and we'll see later in Roman history that Christianity will eventually become the religion of the Roman Empire. Now, Constantine, and we really don't want to hold him up as kind of this peon and icon of the early Catholic Church or Christianity, in that he's going to convert to Christianity on his deathbed, and we're going to think of it as well as hedging his bets there. But Constantine saying, "Hey, I like this idea. I want to subscribe to your YouTube channel. Like and subscribe there. I want to subscribe to your newsletter. What is Christianity?" And the early Christian Church can't really tell him that because we've now moved 300 years beyond Jesus' death. You're about 100 years, 200 years after the apostles. And so Christianity has very much gone into different directions. And very much deciding on fundamental natures of the religion, of simple things like how much of a God is Jesus? Is he 100% godlike? He has no earthly form, right? He is just all part of the Godhead, and so he's not a man. Is he a man that had a holy birth, that is fully amongst us and is flesh and blood like us, but again was born of God, to again the Virgin Mary and all this? What is that? What is Christianity? Is Christianity a being going into the desert and digging a hole and relying on kindness of strangers to deliver food and water to you as you pray for your salvation and others? Is Christianity going on top of a 20-foot tall pole in the desert and living that life away from everybody? And that's what some early Christians believe. And so, what is Christianity is very much a simple question, but one the early church has a hard enough time trying to do. So, Constantine says, yeah, give me some clarity here. So, the Council of Nicaea is important in terms of Catholic and Christian church history, and that this is a council of church leaders, particularly in the East, where the religion has very much grown and taken hold. And what this will do is have a early church conference, and the effect is this will solidify what is, and most importantly, what is not Christian doctrine. This is what decides, this is what Christians believe, is X, Y, and Z. And if you believe in A or E, that is not Christianity. You are a heretic. You are not a part of us. And we'll see how those people will later be persecuted in the next 2,000 some years. But that's the big idea. The Council of Nicaea is going to decide books on the Bible. It's going to pick the Gospels that they approve of. Gospel of Thomas, written, all right, exists. Not in the Bible. Gospel of Mary Magdalene, written, exists, not in the Bible. Whether it's those actual authors of those people, that's a more theological debate, but those are chosen to be excluded from what we think of the capital B Bible, particularly the New Testament. That's all decided at the Council of Nicaea, which is a big deal in terms of church history. So again, the idea of the martyrdom of Christians is a big important part. We got our lions and tigers, oh my, within the arena, and how do on a cloudy day here, how do these people see these Christians eaten? We're going to get the Christians crucified and being lit on fire for the enjoyment of the crowd down there. So we kind of worked our way through the early Christian history. And we see the rise of Christianity in the architecture as well. So this is one of the oldest known purpose-built churches in the world, in Roman, near Aqaba, and that was discovered just about 20 years ago, in the early 2000s. And we begin to see this very interesting shift of people who were worshiping the Roman gods now moving towards worshiping Jesus and the Christian God. If you go to Aix-en-Provence and you go to the baptistry, which is, you turn around in this picture, behind you is the cathedral itself. Those pillars holding up the roof of the baptistry's dome are pillars from the former Roman temple in Aix-en-Provence that the Christians have now removed, taken down, and repurposed. So we see this particularly in these early cathedrals, or in this kind of very much blending of a Roman world into the early Christian world. You can see that in the architecture and in some of the ideas, and it's not very much a hard line, like in the sand where there's a before and thereafter. There's very much this period of blending of the cultures and ideas, and we'll see that a little bit when we talk more about church history when we get to the Middle Ages in about 2 units. So we see the spread of Christianity here. Again, it's heavily in the east, and then begins to move westward, and then begins to expand from there. The early organization of the Catholic Church is very much modeled right on the backs of the model of government set up by Augustus and his civil service. Again, the head priest for the Catholic Church in Rome takes the name of the head priest of the Roman religion, the Pontifex Maximus or the Pope. So we're going to do a hard shift in gears, turn left here, going from the rise of Christianity now to the decline of Rome. And we begin to see in the 3rd century AD, in the 200s, Rome's kind of long, slow decline after the Pax Romana. And we really want to emphasize, and we'll talk more about this in the next slide as we finish up, this idea that, again, this is not one singular event, but a long, slow process of change. So if you read chapter 6, section 4, and we do a little chart on this, we see that there's many different reasons. We're going to simplify here, but there's a lot of different reasons why Rome declines. And we can get into all, and this is half a semester's worth of stuff if you want to get into this in college. But the first big problem is that Rome's economy begins to weaken. It is struck by inflation, and that inflation very much is tied into this idea that Rome begins to not have as many gold or silver sources being brought into the empire. With the monetary policy of the ancient world here, it's very much if you want to have more money, you need to find more money to make it out of. So this works well in Rome's era of expansion because you can just go to the next tribe and take their gold. Now there's more gold. You can go to the next area, take it. Now there's more gold. You go to the next area, there's a new gold mine. But when we start to run out of that, that's going to fix the money supply. There's going to be less liquidity in the market, and that's going to put some pretty hard restrictions and hard caps on how much the economy can expand. This is the idea why the United States prints money there. Again, if you go and you make a whole new sector, we invent airplanes, you invent AI, you invent asteroid mining companies, you need to have cash to be able to go and finance stuff. And that's a little bit more heavy on the monetary policy, but that's not happening in Rome. So to be able to get more money into the system, you're taking one gold coin, splitting it in half, taking that singular amount of gold that made up one gold coin, and now mixing with other metals. And so if you're a baker, you're not going to accept those two new gold coins anymore because those two new golds are the same amount of gold as one gold coin has. So that's going to rise prices, and that's going to be a problem. That's going to weaken the economy and put a hard brakes on for Rome to be able to economically expand, and it begins to retract. We see the loyalty of the army begin to lessen as Rome relies less on paying for Roman soldiers itself and more paying on mercenaries and foreigners to fight it. It becomes this interesting idea of what is a foreigner because we begin to see this expansion of Rome as Rome expands and incorporates these new peoples into the Roman Empire. Those people need jobs. What's an easy job to give them as an army? You keep them in those places. And now what do you do if you're on the Rhine River in Germania and your cousin is on the other side, but you're a Roman now and he's not? And what do you go and you do? And so that begins to see and put a test on Rome. And it's again, if you're a person in Roman Britain and you're fighting for Rome and they move you to fighting in, say, Egypt, okay, what is Rome to you? Why are you going to fight that hard for it? And that becomes an issue the Romans have to deal with that. These issues are not ignored. These issues are recognized, and different emperors try to be able to go and make changes to try to bring about the reforms to fix some of these issues. So Diocletian is an important emperor in terms of the Roman history in the reform that he makes, very simply of recognizing that the size of the empire is just too big and unwieldy, and it can be better managed with two people. So he takes a line, draws it on a map, and takes the empire and divides it amongst two emperors, with an emperor in the west in Rome and the emperor in the east in Constantinople. This is also very much a recognition of the withdrawal and retraction of power and wealth in the western part of the empire and the rise and expansion of wealth in the eastern part of the empire, particularly in the eastern Mediterranean, that's been a source of economic power for millennia at this point. So it's a recognition of the unwieldiness of the empire at that point and how it very much can be better suited to do that. Now, we talked about Constantine before. Hopefully you left space in your study guide. We can go and fill in this idea that Constantine is going to come along and then move the administrative center and administrative services of the capital from Rome to Constantinople in the east. So Constantinople now becomes the major government seat of power. Rome is still important, but now this is a recognizing the power of the Eastern Empire and where all the wealth is located. It's in the East. Politically, we also see a near constant turnover of emperors at the top. The 200 sees all these emperors very, very, very quickly turning over again and again and again. During the Pax Romana, you've got like 200 years with maybe 10, 15 emperors. So they're ruling for large sections of time, and you get used to kind of their rule, their ideas. And then we move into the period after the Pax Romana, where you've got 20 emperors in 100 years. Famously in the 200 of the years of three emperors, and we see this very much repeated pattern of a general killing the emperor, becoming the emperor, and then having one of his generals kill him. And we see this on the map. All these emperors very kind of constantly turning over, and there's no continuity, there's no stability at the top. Now, the civil service is going to kind of buffer that and take the finer edges off, but this is going to be a problem. We need strong leadership, and we just don't see it in the 200s, which is going to set up Rome on its path towards decline. Diocletian recognizes this, and again, if we pull up the laser pointer, we can see he just draws a line down the middle. One emperor in Rome, one emperor in Constantinople to be able to manage it a little bit better. And again, we can see this in not only the Catholic organization, but in the Roman organization itself. So to tie end a bow on the Roman Empire here, we begin to see Rome's decline begin to pick up towards the end of the 300s into the 400s. 370 AD, we begin to see all these Germanic peoples pushing into Romans' lands. And the cause of that are the Huns, a Mongol-like group from Central Asia and the steppes of Russia moving into the region. They're bringing death and destruction and pestilence and disease. And so they're beginning to push into Eastern Europe. Those Eastern European peoples are pushing into the Central European Germanic tribes, and they are being pushed westward. The problem for the Germanic peoples is that there's a very hard wall and line on that Rhine River with the Roman Empire. And that's going to hold and hold and hold until finally it's going to burst and break. And as we saw, some of the issues that, say, Augustus does to stabilize the frontiers in the last century BC, right, to move the legions towards the frontiers, well, if those legions are defeated, then there's nothing protecting the interior of Rome once you get past them. So in 410 AD, we see the Germans work all the way into Rome and plunder the city over 3 days and steal everything that's not nailed down. In 444 AD, Attila the Hun, one of the great leaders and war chieftains of this group, terrorizes the emperor, gets down to Rome itself. And in 476 AD, another Germanic peoples goes into Rome, and there the last Roman emperor is deposed. He's kicked off, and one of these German chieftains declares himself the Roman emperor, but not a lot of people recognize him as, okay, great, but how Roman are you? And that usually this 476 AD is kind of the, if you're going hard and fast and we're looking for specific dates, marks the end of the Roman Empire. But a very important question we want to ask, and something that we'll spend almost the entire last lecture on in this unit, is does the Roman Empire end with the fall of Rome? Without Rome, one, can you have a Roman Empire? The idea of Rome itself is so centrally ingrained and a part of this. Can you have a Roman Empire if you don't have Rome? But in another sense, we just talked about this idea. Where is the Roman Empire in 476 AD? Because it's not in Rome. Right? Constantinople is the Roman power in the Mediterranean. And the Byzantine Empire, which is a name given to this time period and place by historians in the 1800s, 1900s, to give a little bit more separation and clarity to this time period, they call themselves Romans. And they're going to last, and we're going to have a Roman emperor in Constantinople until 1453 when the city falls to the Ottoman Turks. So what does it mean to be Roman? What does it mean? And this is something we've talked about in class, and this is very much something we'll get into at the beginning of the Middle Ages. Can you have a urban society that is Roman when you have no more people living in cities? But yet we still have the major city that calls itself Roman in Constantinople, and we see a lot of the different players and things go on from there. So not a right or wrong answer to say yes or no, but very much one you should hint, wink, nudge, be able to explain and provide examples to. We saw Rome going and putting up boundaries and borders on its frontiers all the way up in Scotland, famously Hadrian's Wall, and we see other fortifications built around the empire to go to provide stability on the frontiers. But if all of your troops are on those walls and frontiers, if those are then breached, then there's nothing stopping anybody. And we see the Ostrogoths, the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Quarters, the Burgundians, the Franks, the Germans, the Angles, the Saxons, right, being pushed by the Huns into the empire. And once they break through, it becomes very much everybody for themselves. And you're able to kind of run all over. And we see Rome being sacked multiple times over the centuries to be able to do that. And then leading to Rome itself no longer being, quote, Roman. But, as we said, is that the end of the Roman Empire? And what is the legacy of Rome? And what has Rome left to us? And are we a part of the greater Roman Empire today? That's a question that we're going to better answer in our last and final lecture of the unit.